before you know it, it'll snowball into you feeling more comfortable and confident about what you're doing.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Entrepreneurship Decoded. I'm so excited for you guys to meet Tom Brush today. He's the CEO of Advancement Designs, and I'm just so excited for him to discuss his experiences and every advice he has to provide you all. So welcome, Tom. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, Alex. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. So let's just hop right into it. I usually start by asking my guests just their backstory. Who were you when you started? And then just what were your main challenges and obstacles that you faced becoming the person you are today?
Great. Well, thank you. Thanks, first of all, for having me on, and congratulations on starting your podcast. It's quite an ambitious effort for someone who has been doing a little bit of that lately. So my story is I spent probably 25 years in the nonprofit space, mostly higher education, doing a whole host of things, usually surrounding fundraising, marketing, engagement opportunities as a way to help organizations be more connected to their donors and their friends and supporters, and also to help them drive opportunities for them to continue to grow as an organization and as an effort. And so I had done that at large public universities, small private colleges, a whole host of things, as well as serving as a board member and volunteer of a couple of smaller nonprofits as well. And about 2.5 years ago, I just felt like I was needing something different. You know, after 25 years of doing the same thing, or basically the same thing, I felt like there was another opportunity. And it really came about as I was thinking about all the value that I had been provided, that someone had shared with me or that I had learned through different experiences, and felt like there was an opportunity for me to share that and support others, where I could go from gathering and gaining the knowledge for myself, how I could then share it so that others who were doing this work could be more effective and have experiences and understandings. Because I think in the nonprofit space, it's very difficult because resources are limited. And so sometimes they don't have the funding to pay someone the salary that they would need, which means they get someone who's a little more passionate, but maybe less experienced and less understanding, and with less technology resources to support what they are trying to do. And so that's when I launched my own business, Advancement Designs, as a coaching consulting company to provide that to others. One of the things I really felt strongly about was throughout my time, I had been fortunate that I always had someone, usually a peer, that I could talk to, that I could go to, and we could have very frank conversations about, this is what I'm thinking about doing, this is my thought process, and they were so interested in my success and in seeing and supporting me that they could tell me straight up, this is what they thought. So many times in those conversations, I have people say, this is not a good idea. This is not going to work. Or it's a good idea, but it's just not going to work. And those conversations, as frank as they were so helpful in helping me strengthen, focus, and be more clear on what I was trying to get done. And I feel like that's not around. We don't have a lot of peers where we can have those conversations with someone who really cares about where we're going to help us get there. And so that's why I launched this company.
That's awesome. Yeah, a lot of people need that extra, either if it's just feedback or the frankness when it comes to their ideas. Otherwise, we'd be going out and doing every idea that comes to mind, but then, we lose time, resources, all that kind of thing. So it's awesome that you have something like that does that. So you kind of talked about different people who gave you so much value and provided you that feedback that you needed. Was there like a specific experience or person that you met with that was kind of that pivotal person for you that just gave you that awesome value that you can't forget?
There have been a number, but what's interesting to me is I think that I found those people that I needed in different parts of my life, personal, professional, spiritual, all of those things, and that one person gave me all of those things. And that was thinking that helped me figure out really how I was going to work with my clients. That we really need partners. And we need partners that are going to provide us with unique and different perspectives. We have our own perspective. And if we are not thinking about the people we work with, the people we serve, the people, our clients, and how are they, what's their perspective as they look at a certain situation, we're not going to be as effective. And then we have to put together a plan of how we're going to make that work. And so I was fortunate to have mentors, you could call them that. Some were mentors, some were friends, some were coaches that helped me figure out what were the things that I needed to do, how I needed to be held accountable, and sometimes offer me the knowledge or wisdom that I didn't have to help me move forward. And I think I took all of those to try to figure out where I needed them most. So I had someone I worked for 10 years who had a really different perspective on the industry that we were in and made me look at things in a different way and really focus on the things that I can control. I can spend a lot of time worrying about all those things that I can't control, but all that usually does is lead to overwhelm, frustration, and just getting stuck. So if I can take a step back and say, all right, well, what are the things I can actually control? And let me focus on those so that I can keep moving and take the next step and find my way forward. So that was critical. In my health, I needed to lose some weight and get in shape. I needed a coach who was going to say, this is the technique you use. These are the exercises you need to do. And I think in understanding that has helped me better understand why we need coaches or mentors in our life. It can be very easy for us to forget the basics. And in reality, the basics are the things that are the building blocks that everything else comes along with. I reckon it to a professional athlete who have coaches. That was the one story I clearly remember is I was watching the US Open tennis tournament a year ago. And they kept showing pictures of these people in the stands after every point. And finally they said that's their coach. So here you had in the US Open finals, two of the greatest tennis players in all of the world who can do anything and everything with a racket and a ball. And yet they have a coach who helps them figure out what are those little tweaks. They see something that we can't see in ourselves because they're looking at it differently. And that just helped me realize that if I was going to take my business somewhere, I needed to have a coach who could help me see where are those pieces that are missing and maybe change my perspective. And that has just really helped my business take off. And it's what I now talk to others about is you can sit behind your desk or in your office and try to dream up all the possible scenarios. And usually you're just going to drive yourself crazy. Take the time to find someone that you can talk to who truly is invested in you so that they can step and see, well, you know what, if you do this, you might be able to be a little more effective. And what I find so fascinating about it is half the people I talk to when I share ideas or concepts, they already know them. They know the value of what they are. They have just forgotten or not created and made them a priority in how they move their organization or themselves forward. And so opening up that realm of possibility of those people has made a significant difference in how they then are able to do their work.
That's really cool. So you talked about having mentors and having people kind of guide you through your experience. You said you've only 2.5 years ago, you had this epiphany and decided to create your own business. So what were kind of the main obstacles and challenges, if you've had any, with mentors and those kind of people helping you with those obstacles and challenges?
Yeah, I went back and focused on goals. I think that was something that I had done when I worked for an organization. I was very rigid about, here's our annual goals. We're going to review them every quarter to make sure that they're still important and that we're making progress towards them so that if we needed to, we could pivot and shift. And I forgot that, I think, in running my own business. And so when I decided to hire a coach, we got to a point where he said, the 14th of every month, I'm going to send them an update of what my goals are. And we had sat and talked about what are true stretch goals. If I really want to get to where I want to be, I can't just say, oh yeah, I'm going to be mediocre. I want to be advancing what I'm doing. And so the opportunity to every month the accountability of sending those goals and then being able to look at it and say, I'm making progress here, I'm not making progress there, how do I move forward? So really setting and evaluating goals was a critical piece of it. And mindset. You know, it's so easy for us to get into a place of self-doubt and questioning, especially when something doesn't go the way we want it to go. You know, we can be like, well, I wonder what happened and why didn't that work out? And typically we make so much more of the small disturbances or things that don't go well and spend so little time on all of the wonderful benefits and the positive things that happen that it becomes very easy for us to be dragged down by the few negatives. And an example of that was I gave a presentation to a group, about 35 people. And then I got the feedback, you know, you fill out an evaluation form and they got information on it. 33 of the 34 or 5 people said was very good or excellent. They got all this information from it. It was really helpful. It gave them a path. One person was like, yeah, I really didn't get much out of that. The amount of time I spent focused on that one person and thinking, well, what could I have done differently and what was wrong with it and where was it at? I completely forgot about the 34 people who were like, this was excellent. You know, this was really helpful and added value. And I think that becomes very easy for us to do, is that we get easily dragged down by the negative and do not take as much time to celebrate the positive and the successes we have. So I think those were 2 really key obstacles, is being sure that I'm setting and measuring goals and then working through the questioning and self-doubt and not really focusing on the positive things that happen.
Awesome. So kind of going more into that, is that something you see in the clients that you have, that's kind of the main challenges they have, or are there other obstacles that they have to go through to be successful in what they're doing?
Sure. I think that there's, especially when there are so many entrepreneurs out there and people who are like you, who are trying to start and figure out their career and try something different, self-doubt is a huge one. Confidence is another. You know, especially if we're going down a path that we haven't really had a lot of experience with, it can be easy to have our confidence shaken. So for me, when I stand up and speak in front of audiences, I feel very comfortable in that space. So even if I have like a little slip up or this didn't go perfect, I'm confident that that's a way that I can communicate my message effectively. So I know that the next time it's going to be fine. But if I'm someone who hasn't done a lot of public speaking and I stood up in front of the crowd and struggled to find my words or my slides didn't work the way I wanted, I can very easily fall back and be like, I'm not going to continue doing that. I'm not confident about how that goes. And so I think that self-doubt and confidence, you see it all the time because people have expectations and things they want to accomplish. And the biggest challenge is I think we get stuck in our head. We let these things fester and roll around, and usually it's the negative, and that's not helping us move forward. It just helps us get stuck. And I think too many business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, people who want to be leaders struggle with that because they maybe haven't had the success that they thought or they believed they were going to have, so their confidence just wanes a little bit fairly regularly. And I think that's just they haven't decided that someone else can help them. They feel like they have to do it all. It's all on our own shoulders. I'm the boss. I'm the person who came up with this idea. And I'm a firm believer that we accomplish almost nothing by ourselves, that we have partners who help us figure out how we're going to get from where we are to where we want to be. And when we leverage that for its full potential, amazing things open up and opportunities become much more clear.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I really resonate with that, and I like that change in perspective. That I've had other entrepreneurs come on and they say that teamwork makes the dream work, right? But I think hearing it over and over again, you start to actually realize that. And like, especially me, I've only been doing this a couple months and I'm still trying to do pretty much everything by myself. But now I'm kind of starting to create a team and we're starting to get more momentum from that. So I can really resonate with that just because, you know, you can do things by yourself, but you can get way more done if you have a team or people there to support you in ways that you can't do just by yourself. So I think you have a really
Yeah.
good.
And if we remember that we only know what we know, right? There's certain things that we just have never had that experience or gained that knowledge of. So how do we move forward? And I think for business leaders and entrepreneurs, it's a significant struggle. We start out because we have knowledge or expertise in an area, and that's all we want to do. The great example is of somebody who loves to bake. And I love to bake, not me, but people love to bake, and their baking is so good that their friends are like, yeah, that's awesome. You ought to sell that. And they're like, I never really thought about that. And like, all right, I'll try that. And now they get all these orders in, and now on top of baking, they've got to fill orders, and they've got to make sure they have the right inventory, and they have to, they get so popular that now they have to think about an office space, and they have to think about hiring staff and managing staff and taxes and finances, and they end up doing everything but the thing they love, which is baking. So they're spending less and less time doing that and more on things that they probably don't have a ton of experience in. So it takes them longer. They're not as effective at it. And it just, again, leads to frustration. And they're like, well, why did I get in this? I wanted to just bake. Now I'm like running a business, and that wasn't necessarily where I wanted to be. And so I think for us to remember, we only have the knowledge and experience that we have. And many times we have to look outside for others who have had different experiences, different knowledge, different strengths.
Yeah, like that's a great point. So from kind of just your journey for the past 2 years, do you feel like you have learned like something pivotal, or have you feel like you've had a whole transformation as a person, CEO, business leader from these 2.5 years of experience being a business leader?
Yeah, I started to have a revelation about 6 months ago that the way I was working with the nonprofit world would work outside of that. And that maybe there was an opportunity for me to expand the value that I could provide to the world or to others, and that I could provide that to more people if I was looking and working outside of the nonprofit area. But I never really had that impetus, or never really could come to grips with, yes, that was the right decision, until March of this year, when things all went, I had 3 or 4 projects that were canceled. I had a couple of speaking engagements that were eliminated. I had a workshop that I was supposed to do that got canceled. And so I was starting to think about, well, what's going to happen if the nonprofit world doesn't have the resources they thought they had? People don't have the money to donate to them, so they have more resources. What is that landscape going to look like? And I have a friend, and we've kind of gone through some of these things together. And we just had a discussion. And we made a decision that we could sit there and, because he had the same thing happen, we could sit there and complain and worry about what has impacted us, or we could choose to do something different. And we're like, we're going to do something different. We're going to be the ones who are not, if most people are sitting at home, worried, overwhelmed, trying to figure this all out, we want to be the ones that are talking about how to get them moving, how to take the next step forward. And we just came up with, well, let's start a daily, weekly podcast, I guess is what you would call it. But it's more like we started out as a Facebook Live, and then we added it to YouTube, and then we started getting a following, and people were commenting and sharing, and so we said, well, maybe we need to start a Facebook group. And so we started that and have added people to that, and it's really become more of I don't want to say it's a movement, because that's too strong of a word, but we came up with the word renegades and decided to define it as those people who want to be true to themselves, who want to find their way in the way that they want to do it. And that really resonated with both of us. Like, we had been through a lot of different experiences, had some challenges and obstacles, and kind of decided that, look, we want to forge our own path. But it wasn't always clear. And that sometimes that was the case for others. So how can we try to help them along that path? And I think what it did was it opened up to me the opportunity to help more than just the nonprofit world. Is there were business owners, there were leaders in industry or organizations, there were workers who were all looking for, how do I just stop being stuck, and how do I move forward? And it is now spawning into a whole nother component of my business. And for a long time, I struggled with, well, I've got 30 plus years of experience in one way. Do I get rid of all of that and start heading down this path? And again, in a conversation with my coach, we realized that we could do both, that one was not exclusive of the other, that there may be some different languages and there may be some different options, and the people who I was trying to serve could fall into both categories, and that I could try to, and I would be able to bring value to them. And so this whole new part of me has evolved that I think allows me to continue to provide the service that I feel really good about with the nonprofit space, and bring some of that knowledge and awareness that is very similar to the work being done by entrepreneurs, small business owners, leaders in organizations, and that I have the opportunity to impact more people, which is really what I'm trying to do.
That's amazing that you can just take your experience and passions and put it into something that was, you found a problem and then you just solved it. So that's kind of the definition of an entrepreneur, someone who could just find something and then say, okay, let's just change it, fix the problem, and make it work.
And usually it is, they have to look at it a little bit differently. You know, in the one or two phone calls we had early on, we decided we're not going to look at this like everybody else. We are not going to say, and we had some benefits that in our world, we had a little more experience with Zoom. We were pretty involved with Facebook. We had worked from home pretty significantly. So some of those hurdles that other people were like immediately trying to figure out, we were in a different place and had some knowledge and experience with them. And what ended up happening is these conversations that we would have every month or two, where we would coach one another and just talk through challenges, pretty much brought to that programming. And it was kind of a fascinating how it evolved to where it is today. And I think the long-term possibilities are significant. And at the same time, there are challenges and hurdles that we go through every day. But I don't think I've been more convinced that this is the right path for me. And I heard a talk last week about when the universe speaks to us, that we need to listen and be open, and probably there is a lot of truth to what they're saying. And the universe was speaking to me last week that, yes, this was the right path. Even though you might be questioning it a little bit, you need to head down this path and see what happens.
That's amazing. That's very inspirational, it probably gives a lot of people just that hope that if you're open to opportunities and you see them, and then you, instead of just rejecting them, even if they seem questionable or risky at the time, just go forth and try it, then you can find that success and the future that you want in the future. So, yeah. So last question. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So just last question. You kind of talked a little bit and you had some great advice from earlier, but just to put all of it together, what would be your just pieces or one piece of advice that you would give to just business leaders, entrepreneurs who are either struggling with, finding those people to support them, or just finding that opportunity that they seem like they're just stuck right now?
Yeah, I think that in some regards there are a couple things to that. My advice when you're stuck, go back to those things you do really well and just take the first step, whatever it might be, as simple as it may be. If you're feeling like, I just can't get over this issue, okay, go to the simplest thing. What's the one thing I can do tomorrow to make a difference? So if I'm struggling to get back to work, when people have to go back to their offices and they're like, wow, I'm thinking about my family and I'm worried about being sick and I'm just back to the new overwhelm, go back to what's the one thing I can do, and then do that again tomorrow, and then do it the next day. And then you'll get to a point where you feel more comfortable, where now you can do two things. And before you know it, it'll snowball into you feeling more comfortable and confident about what you're doing. To me, action is the one way that we can get unstuck. Even if it's not the right action, it's doing something to just keep us moving forward. Because once we start moving, hoping we will be able to pivot and adjust and figure out what are the right things. So I think that's one part of it. I think the other thing for me is that anytime I've had success, it has been because I had the right partners, I was open to different perspectives, and I put together a plan to make it happen. And so to me, that's my like 3 pillars of sustained achievement, is making sure those things are in place. And so as I look to all of my future progress or opportunities, those are things that are always going to be a part of who and what I am and how I'm going to do it. And surrounded in the right community. I think that's another thing, is that you benefit from the people that you're around. And if you're around a lot of people who are talking negatively or just always kind of like not positive, it's going to be harder for you to be positive. So surround yourself with great people, find the right perspective, and put together a really good plan that you will follow.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think that's just a great way to end. So I just want to thank you, Tom, for coming on. I loved hearing your story and your advice for what you do now, and just putting your passions and expertise to amazing use. So I just thank you for that. For whoever's watching and listening, thank you guys for tuning in. I love you guys all so much. Remember, if you guys want to get to know Tom a little bit more, figure out what he's doing coaching wise, his information is down below. You guys know also that my ebook is now live, so you guys can get that, a secret success guide to know more about updated consumer behavior, all those kinds of things. So that's also down below. Thank you guys again. Thank you, Tom. I really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.